Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: Jack Ma gets back into business with Ma's Kitchen Food. Hong Kong dollar rate rises to 16-year high as cash demand jumps. Hong Kong stocks fall as banks, BYD slip before reports showing China slowdown. China industrial profit growth eases as deflation persists. ByteDance to fire hundreds, shut Nuverse in major gaming retreat. Jack Ma gets back into business with Ma's Kitchen Food. Bloomberg. Jack Ma, the co-founder of Alibaba Group Holding Limited, has set up a new company called Hangzhou Ma's Kitchen Food that will sell packaged agricultural products. This move comes as Ma has largely retreated from the spotlight since 2020 when Beijing cracked down on his companies Alibaba and Ant Group. Ma has since focused on agricultural pursuits through his foundation and has joined other entrepreneurs in supporting the Communist Party's Common Prosperity Initiative. Few details have been released about Ma's new venture. Hong Kong dollar rate rises to 16-year high as cash demand jumps. Bloomberg. The Hong Kong Interbank Offered Rate, HIBOR, has risen to its highest level in 16 years as year-end demand for cash adds to an already tight liquidity situation. The rise in HIBOR is supporting the Hong Kong dollar, as higher rates make assets denominated in the city's currency more appealing relative to U.S. assets. The local currency has risen to its strongest level since December. The tightening liquidity situation in Hong Kong is expected to continue into 2023, which may lead to further increases in HIBOR. Hong Kong stocks fall as banks, BYD slip before reports showing China slowdown. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong stocks fell to a two-week low ahead of reports expected this week that may show further signs of China's economic slowdown. Banks also slipped amid speculation that they will be asked to lend more to support troubled property developers, and BYD fell due to a price war among Chinese electric vehicle (EV) makers. The Hang Seng Index dropped 0.6% to reach its lowest level since November 17. China industrial profit growth eases as deflation persists. Bloomberg. Profits at China's industrial companies rose at a slower pace in October, suggesting that the country's economic recovery remains fragile. Industrial profits increased by 2.7% from a year ago, a significant decrease from September's 11.9% gain and August's 17.2% jump. For the first 10 months of 2023, profits fell by 7.8% compared to the same period last year. The data reflects pressures on commodity prices and weak domestic demand. Lingering weaknesses in China's economy, such as a manufacturing contraction and a property slump, are also weighing on activity. The subdued profit growth may lead industrial companies to remain cautious about expanding or hiring, adding further pressure on prices. ByteDance to fire hundreds, shut Nuverse in major gaming retreat. Bloomberg. ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, is planning to cut hundreds of jobs in the gaming sector and wind down its gaming brand Nuverse. The move marks ByteDance's biggest retreat from the gaming industry, where it has struggled to compete with dominant players Tencent and NetEase. ByteDance is also considering selling its gaming studio, Shanghai Moontun Technology. The company has been gradually scaling back its gaming ambitions after failing to gain market share from Tencent. ByteDance is expected to announce the job cuts and project closures on Monday. Why Hong Kong and mainland China buyers are acquiring prime Australian property. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong and mainland China-based buyers are snapping up residential units in Australia despite elevated interest rates and surging home prices down under, according to agents. Average home prices in some major Australian cities rose by about 1% month-on-month in October, according to CoreLogic, a property data services provider in Australia and New Zealand. Circle, Japan's SBI enter pact to spur stablecoin USDC usage. Bloomberg. Stablecoin issuer Circle Internet Financial has partnered with SBI Holdings to promote the use of the USDC token in Japan. SBI Holdings, a venture capital group and financial services provider, will also work with Circle on establishing a banking relationship and promoting the use of Circle's Web3 services in Japan. The move comes as Japan competes with Singapore and Hong Kong to develop a digital asset hub. Stablecoins are typically pegged one-to-one to major currencies and backed by reserves like cash and bonds. Circle's USD coin, USDC, is the second largest stablecoin by market capitalization, after Tether. Hong Kong's stressed developers start to turn to private credit. Bloomberg. Hong Kong's increasingly distressed property sector is drawing in a wave of private credit lenders, including family offices, asset managers, and private equity firms. The $23.4 billion of bank loans due next year in a city with one of the world's most expensive property markets, and weakening revenues from office buildings and retail space, have created a funding gap for developers. However, higher interest rates are adding to the industry's woes, and analysts said some lenders were concerned that returns may fall below their targets. Australia's Albanese tackles China paradox with shrewd diplomacy. Nikkei Asia. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's recent visit to China marked a significant thaw in relations between the two countries. The visit, the first by an Australian leader in over 7 years, saw Albanese and Chinese President Xi Jinping agree to normalize diplomatic ties and work towards expanding bilateral trade. The visit also put Albanese ahead of U.S. President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in meeting Xi, as their relationships with China have turned frosty. While China has suggested that Australia succumb to its economic might, it is clear that the Albanese administration is making a cold calculation based on its strategic interests. Relations between China and Australia deteriorated in April 2020 when Australia demanded an independent investigation into the origins of the coronavirus. The relationship worsened when Australia called for an investigation into the origins of COVID-19, which drew fierce backlash from China. In retaliation, Beijing imposed broad restrictions on imports of Australian products. However, the impact of Chinese sanctions on Australia has been relatively minimal, and Australia has quickly found alternative markets for its exports. Furthermore, China's use of economic coercion has backfired, leading to a need for countries to reduce their supply chain dependence on China. Albanese's visit to China signifies a calculated strategic move by the Australian government. It aims to establish a stable relationship with China to buy time to enhance the country's deterrence against China's potential aggression. As part of this strategy, Australia is using China's own money to bolster its defense capabilities. The visit also highlights the increasingly complex geopolitical landscape in the Indo-Pacific region. Link REIT's Guangzhou Mall opening shows commitment to China market, CEO. South China Morning Post. Link REIT has opened a renovated shopping mall in Guangzhou, a clear indication of its focus on mainland China. The company acquired the shopping mall in June 2021 for $451 million and renamed it Link Plaza Tianhe. The mall now covers 90,000 square meters with 160 tenants and 1,000 car parking spaces. Link REIT's sixth investment in mainland China, it is part of the company's focus on the Greater Bay Area. The mall's renovation cost around $46 million, and it now has an occupancy rate of over 95%, with sales rising 30% in October from September. Costs pushed up Hong Kong squash open ticket price, but it's a good deal, official. South China Morning Post. The Hong Kong Squash Open, which begins on Monday, has been hailed as an opportunity to speed up the city's recovery from COVID-19. despite steep ticket prices for the later stages of the tournament. Hong Kong's Major Sports Events Committee Chairman, Wilfreding Sauke, says that local fans are getting a very good deal to watch world-class players compete. The tournament will take place in an outdoor glass court in West Kowloon and is expected to attract overseas visitors, who will help promote the city's recovery and boost tourism. Australia keen to boost mango exports to Japan after curbs eased. Japan Times. Australia is looking to increase its mango exports to Japan after restrictions on the varieties of the fruit that can be shipped to the country were lifted. Australia wants to take advantage of its different mango season, which is opposite to that of rival producers in the Northern Hemisphere. Currently, Australia exports about 10% of the 70,000 tons of mangoes it produces each year, with major export destinations being New Zealand, Singapore, and China, including Hong Kong. Artist Zheng Fangji depicts zero COVID after a lifetime of service to the Chinese state. Associated Press. Zheng Fangji, an 85-year-old retired architect and artist in Shenzhen, has painted a series of artworks to commemorate 3 years of China's strict zero-COVID controls, which sparked nationwide protests. Despite the widespread criticism of the measures, Zheng supports them and sees the people's adherence to them as heroic. Zheng has spent much of his life in service to the Chinese state, designing monuments and buildings. His art is informed by socialist realism, a style he encountered growing up in Maoist China. He is inspired by the works of Ilya Repin, who depicted the quiet heroism of ordinary people in harsh conditions. Zheng's series of artworks portray the impact of the coronavirus on daily life in China, from nurses swabbing residents to children attending online classes. The series also includes images of residents locked in their complexes and masked delivery drivers tossing groceries over fences during the lockdowns. Zheng and his wife caught the virus last winter when controls were abruptly lifted, and they spent weeks recovering. Despite the pandemic's historic nature, few depictions of the era exist in China outside official exhibits, and the state has tightened controls on artistic expression. Yuan's recovery gains momentum as seasonal tailwind kicks in. Bloomberg. Analysts predict that China's yuan will be boosted by year-end tailwinds and increased dollar sales by exporters. The currency has historically strengthened in November and December, as exporters need more local currency to meet cash demand before year-end and the Lunar New Year. The yuan has been one of Asia's worst-performing currencies this year, but its recent rebound, coupled with a faltering US dollar, may encourage exporters to convert their dollar deposits, supporting optimism for a sustainable turnaround. Some analysts predict that the yuan will extend gains toward 7 per dollar, a level last seen in May. Fidelity plans multiple fund launches in China to tap growing demand. South China Morning Post. Fidelity International is planning to launch a number of mutual funds in mainland China to tap into the country's rapidly growing asset management market. The firm has already launched 2 mutual funds in China this year, raising a total of 6.08 billion Chinese yuan, $862 million, and plans to introduce more funds in 2023. Fidelity has seen its business boom in the post-COVID era, with assets under management reaching $714.3 billion as of September, up 22.7% from 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension, here to bring you the latest news from across the world. Today, we have an interesting mix of stories, from Jack Ma's return to the business world to China's economic slowdown and Australia's diplomatic maneuvering with China. So, let's dive in. First up, Jack Ma, the co-founder of Alibaba, has set up a new company called Hangzhou Ma's Kitchen Food. It seems that Ma is getting back into business after largely retreating from the spotlight. This move comes as no surprise, as Ma has been focusing on agricultural pursuits through his foundation and supporting the Communist Party's Common Prosperity Initiative. It will be interesting to see how this venture unfolds and what it means for Ma's future business endeavors. Next, we have news from Hong Kong, where the interbank offered rate, HIBOR, has risen to its highest level in 16 years. Year-end cash demand has exacerbated the already tight liquidity situation in the city. This rise in HIBOR is supporting the Hong Kong dollar, making assets denominated in the local currency more appealing. The tightening liquidity situation is expected to continue into 2023, which may lead to further increases in HIBOR. So, if you're planning a trip to Hong Kong, make sure to keep an eye on the currency exchange rates. Moving on to China, we see that Hong Kong stocks have fallen to a 2-week low. This comes ahead of reports expected this week that may show further signs of China's economic slowdown. Banks and BYD, a Chinese electric vehicle maker, are among the companies that have seen a decline in stock prices. It seems that speculation about troubled property developers and a price war in the EV sector are contributing to this downward trend. It's a challenging time for the Chinese economy, and investors are feeling the pressure. Speaking of China's economy, profits at China's industrial companies rose at a slower pace in October. This suggests that the country's economic recovery remains fragile. Lingering weaknesses in China's economy, such as a manufacturing contraction and a property slump, are weighing on activity. This subdued profit growth may lead industrial companies to remain cautious about expanding or hiring, adding further pressure on prices. China's economic challenges are far from over, and it will be interesting to see how the government tackles these issues. In other news, ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, is planning to cut hundreds of jobs in the gaming sector and wind down its gaming brand Nuverse. ByteDance has struggled to compete with dominant players like Tencent and NetEase in the gaming industry. It's a significant retreat for ByteDance, and it remains to be seen what the future holds for the company in this space. Shifting our focus to Australia, we see that the country is keen to boost mango exports to Japan. With restrictions on the varieties of mangoes that can be shipped to Japan lifted, Australia wants to take advantage of its different mango season. Currently, Australia exports about 10% of the 70,000 tons of mangoes it produces each year, and it sees Japan as a potential market for expansion. So, get ready for some delicious Australian mangoes on your next trip to Japan. Finally, let's talk about art. Zheng Fangji, an 85-year-old artist in Shenzhen, has painted a series of artworks to commemorate 3 years of China's strict zero-COVID controls. Despite criticism of the measures, Zheng sees the people's adherence to them as heroic. His series of artworks depict the impact of the coronavirus on daily life in China, capturing moments of resilience and struggle. It's a unique perspective on a historic period that is often overlooked in China's official exhibits. And there you have it, folks. A glimpse into the latest news from around the world. From Jack Ma's return to the business world to China's economic challenges and Australia's diplomatic maneuvers with China, there's never a dull moment. I hope you enjoyed this update, and now it's time for you to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions? I'm here to listen and discuss. Let's dive into the fascinating world of current affairs together. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6 Do brief via email.